The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy lived on a farm in the middle of the great Kansas prairies with her Uncle Henry and Aunt Em. When she stood outside their one-roomed wooden house, she could see nothing but flat land scorched grey by the sun. Not a tree nor a house broke the broad sweep of country that stretched to the sky in all directions. Dorothy had just one friend, a little black dog called Toto, whom she loved dearly. Usually Dorothy and Toto spent all day playing together, but one day something stopped them. Uncle Henry sat on the porch, and Dorothy stood with Toto in her arms, and they both looked anxiously at the gloomy grey sky. From the north they heard the low wail of the wind, and they could see the long grass bowing before the approaching storm. Then from the south came a sharp whistling sound. Suddenly Uncle Henry stood up.
"There's a cyclone coming, Em!"
he shouted.
"I'll go look after the animals."
And he ran off to the sheds.
"Quick, Dorothy!"
screamed Aunt Em from inside the house.
"Run for the cellar!"
Aunt Em threw open the trapdoor in the floor and climbed down the ladder into a small dark hole dug in the ground. Dorothy started to follow her, but she was only halfway across the room when there came a great shriek from the wind, and the house shook violently. Then the strangest thing happened. The house whirled around 2 or 3 times and rose slowly into the air. The north and the south winds had met where the house stood and made it the exact centre of the cyclone. The great pressure of the wind on every side of the house raised it up higher and higher until it was right at the top of the cyclone. There it stayed to be carried far away. It was very dark, and the wind howled horribly. But after the first few whirls, the house just swayed gently. At first, Dorothy was filled with terror at the thought of being dashed to pieces when the house came down to earth. But as the hours passed and nothing terrible happened, she stopped worrying. At last, she crawled over the swaying floor to her bed, and with Toto beside her, she soon fell fast asleep. She was woken by a shock so sudden and severe that if she'd not been lying on the soft bed, she might have been badly hurt. As it was, several seconds passed before she realized that the house wasn't moving and that sunshine was flooding the little room. Dorothy sprang from her bed and with Toto at her heels ran and opened the door. She let out a gasp of amazement, for she was now in the middle of a country of marvellous beauty. Wherever she looked, there were banks of gorgeous flowers. Birds with brilliant plumage sang in trees covered with luscious fruits. In the distance, Dorothy saw some little round houses, all painted blue. And then she noticed, coming towards her, a group of the queerest people she'd ever seen. There were 3 men and 1 woman, and although they looked much older than Dorothy, they were certainly no taller. The men, who all had beards, were dressed in blue from their boots right up to their pointed hats. These had little bells round the brims that tinkled sweetly as they moved. The little woman also had a pointed hat, but hers, like her gown, was white. Her face was covered with wrinkles, and she walked rather stiffly up to Dorothy. She then bowed low and said in a sweet voice, "You are welcome, most noble sorceress, to the land of the Munchkins. We are grateful to you for having killed the wicked witch of the East and for setting our people free." Dorothy listened with wonder. What could she possibly mean? You're very kind, but there must be some mistake. I've not killed anything." "Your house did anyway," replied the little old woman. And that is the same thing. Look, there are her 2 feet. Dorothy looked down and gave a little cry of fright. There indeed, just sticking out from under the house, were 2 feet shod in silver shoes with pointed toes. That wicked witch made all the Munchkins slave for her night and day for many years, explained the old woman. They were overjoyed when they saw that she was dead, and they sent a swift messenger to bring me here. I am the Witch of the North.
Oh, gracious, cried Dorothy. Are you a real witch?
Yes, indeed. But I am a good witch, and the people love me. I am not as powerful as the wicked witch who ruled here, or I should have set the people free myself.
But I thought all witches were wicked.
Oh, no, that is a great mistake. Of the 4 witches who lived in the land of Oz, 2 of them, those in the north and the south, are good witches. I know this is true, for I am one of them myself. Those in the east and the west are indeed wicked witches. But now that you have killed one, there is only one wicked witch in all the land of Oz, the one who lives in the west. Just then, the Munchkins, who'd been standing silently by, gave a loud shout and pointed to the corner of the house where the wicked witch had been lying. The old woman began to laugh. The feet of the dead witch had disappeared, and nothing was left but the silver shoes. She was so old that she shriveled to dust in the sun. That is the end of her. But the silver shoes are yours, my dear, and you shall have them to wear. She picked up the shoes, shook the dust out, and handed them to Dorothy.
The Witch of the East was proud of those silver shoes, said a Munchkin, and there is some wonderful charm connected with them, but what it is we never knew.
Oh, thank you, she cried. They fit perfectly. But tell me, can you help me find my way back to Kansas? I live there with my aunt and uncle, and I'm sure they'll be worrying about me.
The Munchkins and the witch first looked at one another, and then at Dorothy, and then shook their heads. I do not know where Kansas is, for I have never heard of it, said the old woman. You see, here in the land of Oz, we are cut off from the rest of the world by a great desert. Your only chance of returning home is to go to the Emerald City and ask the great Wizard of Oz to help you.
Is he a good man?
He is a good wizard and more powerful than all the witches. Whether he is a man or not, I cannot tell, for I have never seen him.
How can I get to the Emerald City?
You must walk along the road paved with yellow brick. It will take you through land that is sometimes bright and pleasant, and sometimes dark and terrible. I am afraid, my dear, that I cannot go with you, but I will give you my kiss. And no one will dare injure a person who has been kissed by the Witch of the North. She kissed Dorothy gently on the forehead, leaving a round, shining mark. Then, with a friendly nod, she whirled round on her left heel 3 times and disappeared. The Munchkins bowed low and walked away through the trees. Left alone, Dorothy prepared for her journey. She changed into her blue and white gingham dress, found her straw hat, and filled a basket with bread. Then, with Toto trotting beside her, she set off along the road of yellow brick. The sun shone brightly, and the birds sang sweetly, and she soon began to feel quite cheerful. When she'd gone several miles, she stopped to have a rest. She climbed to the top of a fence, sat down, and looked across a great cornfield. Not far away was a scarecrow. Its head was a small sack stuffed with straw, with painted eyes, a nose and a mouth. It was dressed in faded blue Munchkin clothes and was raised above the corn by a pole stuck up its back. Dorothy gazed into the Scarecrow's queer painted face, and she was astonished to see one of the eyes slowly wink at her. At first she thought she must have been mistaken. But then the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way, and so she walked up to it.
Good day,
said the Scarecrow.
Oh, did you speak?
I certainly did. How do you do?
Oh, I'm pretty well, thank you. How do you do?
I am not feeling very well at all. Oh, it is very tedious being perched up here night and day to scare away crows. If you would take me off the pole, I would be greatly obliged to you.
Dorothy reached up and lifted the figure off the pole. It was not very heavy.
Thank you very much. I feel like a new man. Now, tell me, who are you, and where are you going?
Oh, my name is Dorothy, and I'm going to the Emerald City to ask the Great Wizard of Oz to send me back to Kansas.
Where is the Emerald City? And who is the Great Wizard of Oz?
Oh, well, don't you know?
No, indeed, I don't know anything. I am stuffed with straw, you see, so I have no brains at all. Do you think if I go to the Emerald City with you that Oz would give me some brains?
I can't tell, but you can come with me if you like.
Oh, thank you. I am most grateful.
Straight away, Dorothy and her strange new friend set off along the road of yellow brick to find the wonderful Wizard of Oz. After a few hours, the road began to get very rough. Sometimes, indeed, the yellow bricks were broken or missing altogether, leaving holes that Toto jumped across and Dorothy walked around. As for the Scarecrow, he just stepped right into the holes and fell full length on the hard bricks. Each time he laughed merrily, while Dorothy lifted him onto his feet again.
Those hard bricks can't hurt my straw,
he said after his first fall.
The only thing that can hurt me is a lighted match. Now, do let me carry that basket for you.
With Toto leading the way, they walked on through countryside which became increasingly bleak. Towards evening they entered a great forest, where the trees grew so big and close together that their branches met over the road and shut out the light. They stumbled along in the darkness until Dorothy could hardly walk another step. At last they came to a little wooden cottage. It was completely deserted, but it had a bed of dried leaves on which Dorothy and Toto soon fell into a sound sleep. The Scarecrow, who was never tired, stood and waited patiently for the morning.
Cannot imagine,
said the Scarecrow.
But we can go and see.
They walked a few steps, and then Dorothy gave out a gasp of surprise. One of the big trees had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it with an uplifted axe in his hands was a man made entirely of tin. He stood perfectly still, as if he couldn't move at all. "Did you groan?" asked Dorothy.
"Yes, I did,"
answered the Tin Man.
"I've been groaning for more than a year, and no one has ever heard me before or come to help me.
"What can we do for you?"
Oh, my joints! Oh, they are so rusted that I cannot move at all. If I am well oiled, I shall soon be all right again. You will find an oil can on a shelf in my cottage."
Dorothy ran to fetch the oil can. Then, with the help of the Scarecrow, she oiled the Tin Man's neck, arms, and legs. He sighed with satisfaction as he slowly lowered his axe.
Thank you. I am extremely grateful. Oh, I have been holding that axe in the air ever since I rusted, and I might have stood there forever if you had not come along. So you have certainly saved my life. How did you happen to be here?
"We're on our way to the Emerald City to see the Great Wizard of Oz. I want him to send me back to Kansas, and the Scarecrow wants him to put some brains into his head." The Tin Man thought deeply for a moment.
Do you suppose the Wizard of Oz could give me a heart?
"If he can give the Scarecrow brains, I don't see why he can't give you a heart,"
Yes,
said the Scarecrow.
Come with us to the Emerald City. We will be pleased to have your company."
So the Tin Man asked Dorothy to put the oil can in her basket in case he should get caught in the rain and rust. Then he shouldered his axe and led the party through the trees to the road of yellow brick. Dorothy now noticed that there was hardly a bird singing in the forest, but there was an occasional deep growl from some wild animal hidden among the trees, and her heart began to beat fast.
do not be afraid.
Said the Tin Man.
The mark of a good witch's kiss on your forehead will protect you from harm.
Just as he spoke, there was a terrible roar, and the next moment a great lion bounded onto the road. With one blow of his paw, he sent the Scarecrow spinning over and over to the edge of the road. Then he struck at the Tin Man with his sharp claws and knocked him to the ground. Little Toto ran barking towards the lion. The huge beast opened his mouth to bite the dog, but Dorothy rushed forward and slapped him hard on the nose. "Don't you dare bite Toto!" she cried. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a big beast like you biting a poor little dog."
"I did not bite him,"
said the lion, rubbing his nose with his paw. "No, but you were going to. You're nothing but a big coward."
"I know it,"
said the lion, hanging his head in shame.
"It is my great sorrow and makes my life very unhappy. If the elephants and the tigers and the bears ever tried to fight me, I should run away. I'm such a coward, but they all think of me as king of the beasts, and I only have to roar to make them all run away from me."
He wiped a tear from his eye with the tip of his tail and sighed.
"Oh, if I only had courage."
"Perhaps the Great Wizard of Oz can help you," said Dorothy.
We are all on our way to visit him in the Emerald City. The Scarecrow is going to ask him for brains, and the Tin Man for a heart. You could ask him for courage.
Then, if you do not mind, I will go with you,
said the lion.
You'll be very welcome, for you'll help to keep away the other wild beasts.
So once more the little company set off, the lion walking with stately strides at Dorothy's side. They had gone some distance when Dorothy noticed the Tin Man brushing tears from his face.
I stepped on a beetle and killed the poor little thing,
he explained.
I must keep my eyes on the road and walk more carefully. People with no heart should try not to be cruel or unkind to anything.
Soon after this, they began to hear strange growling noises among the trees.
I fear we are in the country of the Calidors,
whispered the lion.
They are monstrous beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers, and with claws so long and sharp they could tear me in two as easily as I could kill Tutu.
Dorothy shuddered and was about to speak when suddenly they came to a broad, deep chasm. The friends looked at each other in dismay and then sat down to consider what they should do.
I think I have the answer,
the Scarecrow said finally.
Here is a great tree standing close to the chasm. If the Tin Man chops it down so that it will fall to the other side, we can walk across it. That is a first-rate idea,
said the lion.
One would almost suspect you had brains in your head instead of straw.
The Tin Man set to work at once, and so sharp was his axe that they soon had a bridge. They were just about to cross the bridge when, to their horror, they heard a sharp growl and saw two great beasts running towards them.
Oh, they are the Calidors,
said the lion, beginning to tremble.
Quick,
cried the Scarecrow.
We must get across the bridge.
Dorothy went first, holding Toto in her arms. The Tin Man followed, and the Scarecrow came next. The lion turned to face the Calidors and gave so terrible a roar that for a brief moment they hesitated. But then they rushed forward again. The lion crossed over the bridge and looked back to see what the fierce beasts would do next. Without stopping, they too began to cross.
Stand close behind me,
said the lion to Dorothy.
I will fight them as long as there is breath in my body.
Don't despair,
called the Scarecrow.
If the Tin Man can chop away our end of the bridge, we will all be saved.
The Tin Man began to use his axe at once, and just as the two Calidors were nearly across, the tree fell with a crash into the chasm, carrying the snarling beasts with it. The lion gave out a huge sigh of relief.
Oh, my heart is still pounding with fear.
Ah,
said the Tin Man sadly.
I wish I had a heart to beat.
This adventure made the travellers more anxious than ever to get out of the forest. They began to walk so fast that Dorothy and Toto became very tired, and as darkness began to fall, they had to ride on the lion's back. When the last glimmer of light disappeared from the forest, the travellers camped under a large tree. Dorothy lit a fire, and the Scarecrow hurried off to collect some nuts for her supper. Next morning, the first thing Dorothy noticed was that the trees no longer met overhead. Perhaps, she thought, they were at last coming to the end of the forest. The travellers pressed on, and soon they came to a broad, fast-flowing river. They gasped with pleasure when they saw what was on the other side. It was a beautiful country of green meadows dotted with bright flowers. Trees laden with succulent fruit lined the road of yellow brick.
"The Tin Man will have to build a raft so we can cross the river,"
said the Scarecrow. The Tin Man got to work with his axe, and some hours later the travellers stepped onto a raft made from logs. The Tin Man and the Scarecrow held long poles to push the raft through the water. At first, they managed quite well. But when they reached the middle of the river, the swift current swept the raft downstream, farther and farther away from the road of yellow brick.
"We will never get to the Emerald City if we do not stop the raft,"
said the Scarecrow. He then pushed very hard on his long pole, so hard that it stuck fast in the mud at the bottom of the river. Before he could pull it out again, or let go, the raft was swept away, and the poor Scarecrow was left clinging to the pole in the middle of the swirling water.
"Goodbye!"
he called after them. The lion spoke just as the Tin Man was about to cry for his lost friend.
"Something must be done to save us. I think I can swim to the shore and pull the raft after me if you will only hold fast to the tip of my tail."
The lion sprang into the water, and the Tin Man held onto his tail. Big as the lion was, it was hard work for him to pull the raft to shore. But eventually he got them out of the current, and then Dorothy took the Tin Man's long pole and helped push the raft to land. They were all tired out when they finally stepped onto the pretty green grass. But they were worried about the Scarecrow, and after a few minutes' rest, they began to walk back along the river. Soon they saw their friend perched on his pole in the middle of the water. No one knew how to save him, so they sat down and gazed wistfully at the sad, lonely figure. Presently, a stork flew by.
What are you doing here?
asked the stork. We're wondering how to rescue the Scarecrow, said Dorothy. The stork looked at the Scarecrow.
If he wasn't so big and heavy, I would get him for you.
Oh, but he's not heavy at all. He's only stuffed with straw. If you could bring him back to us, we would thank you forever.
Well, I will try,
said the stork. She flew to the Scarecrow. Then, with her great claws, she grabbed him by the arm and carried him back to his friends. The Scarecrow was so happy that he hugged everyone, even the lion and Toto. Then the kind stork flew away, pleased to have helped someone in trouble. The travellers walked along the smooth road of yellow brick, the Scarecrow singing, "Toll-de-roll-di-oh-oh," at every step. Wherever they looked now, there were green fences and green houses, and the people all wore emerald green clothes. "We must be getting near to the Emerald City," said Dorothy. And as she spoke, a beautiful green glow appeared on the horizon. At last, they arrived at the great green wall that surrounded the Emerald City. In front of them was a big gate, all studded with emeralds that glittered in the sun. Dorothy pushed a button on the gate and heard the tinkling of a bell. Then the gate swung open slowly, and they all stepped into a high, arched room. Before them stood a little man clothed in green. At his side was a large green box.
"Now, why have you come to the Emerald City?"
he asked. "We have come to see the Great Oz," said Dorothy.
Oh, it's been many years since someone asked to see Oz. He is powerful and terrible, and if you've come on a foolish errand, he might be angry and destroy you. But it is not a foolish errand,
said the lion.
It is very important, and we have been told that Oz is a good wizard. Oh, so he is, and he rules the Emerald City wisely and well. But he is most terrible to those who approach him out of curiosity. I am the guardian of the gates, and since you demand to see the great Oz, I must take you to his palace. But first, you must put on the spectacles.
He opened the big box and took out some pairs of spectacles with green glass.
You would be blinded by the brightness of the Emerald City if you did not wear these. When the city was first built, Oz ordered everyone to be locked into a pair, day and night. Only I have the key to unlock them.
The guardian of the gates locked a pair of spectacles onto each of the travellers. Then he led them into the dazzling streets of the city. Everything was green. Even the people's skin had a greenish tinge. When they arrived at the gates of the palace, they were introduced to a soldier with a green beard. He went off to tell Oz that they wished to meet him. "Have you seen Oz?" Dorothy asked on his return.
Oh, no,
he replied.
I don't know anyone who has. Whenever I speak to him, he sits behind a screen. He says that he will see you, but you must each enter his presence alone. He does not want to see more than one of you in a day. I will show you to rooms where you can rest, and tomorrow the great Oz will send for you.
The next morning, a pretty girl dressed Dorothy in a gown of green silk and led her to the throne room of the great Oz. She boldly opened the door and found herself in a wonderful room lined with emeralds. But what interested her more was the green marble throne, for sitting in the middle was an enormous head. The eyes turned slowly and looked at her sharply and steadily. Then the mouth moved, and Dorothy heard a voice say,
I am Oz, the great and terrible. Who are you, and why have you come to see me?
It was not such an awful voice as she'd expected to come from the big head. "I am Dorothy, the small and meek," she replied, "and I have come to you for help." The eyes looked at her thoughtfully. Then the voice asked her where she had got the silver shoes and the mark on her forehead. Dorothy told the story of how her house had landed on the Wicked Witch of the East and killed her. Then the voice asked,
What do you wish me to do?
"Help me get back to my Aunt Em and Uncle Henry in Kansas." The eyes rolled round very queerly.
Before I help you, you must first help me. You must go to the land of the Winkies and kill the Wicked Witch of the West.
"Oh, but that's impossible."
You killed the Wicked Witch of the East, and you wear the silver shoes which bear a powerful charm.
Dorothy began to weep. "I never meant to kill her. If you who are so great and terrible cannot kill the Wicked Witch, well, how can I ever do it?"
That is for you to decide. Now go, and do not ask to see me again until you have completed your task.
Tearfully, Dorothy left the throne room and went back to her friends. They were all very sorry when they heard her story, but there was nothing they could do to help her. The next day, the Scarecrow was led to the throne room. Instead of a head, he saw a most beautiful lady. But she too said that Oz never helped anyone without getting something in return. If the Scarecrow wanted brains, he would have to destroy the Wicked Witch of the West. Next, it was the turn of the Tin Man. He was confronted by a terrible beast, which was nearly as big as an elephant and had 5 eyes, 5 arms, and 5 legs. He told the Tin Man that he would only be given a heart when he had helped Dorothy kill the Wicked Witch of the West. The Lion was the last to visit Oz. When he stepped into the throne room, his whiskers were almost singed by a ball of fire.
I am Oz, the great and terrible,
the ball of fire said.
Bring me proof that the Wicked Witch of the West is dead, and I will give you courage.
The friends got together to decide what to do next.
There is only one thing we can do,
said the Lion.
We must go to the land of the Winkies, seek out the Wicked Witch, and destroy her.
And very reluctantly, Dorothy, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow all agreed. After a good night's sleep in Oz's palace, the travellers were ready to set out on their search for the land of the Winkies and the Wicked Witch of the West. The guardian of the gates unlocked their spectacles and put them back in his box. Then he opened the gate of the Emerald City. "Which road leads to the Wicked Witch of the West?" asked Dorothy.
No road leads to the Wicked Witch,
replied the guardian of the gates.
For no one ever wishes to go that way.
Well, how then are we to find her?
If you keep walking towards the west where the sun sets, the Wicked Witch will find you. She made the Winkies her slaves, and she will want to make you her slaves. So take care!"
With these words ringing in their ears, the friends turned towards the west. Dorothy still wore the pretty silk dress she put on in the palace, but to her amazement, now it was pure white. She and her friends walked as fast as they could, and soon left the Emerald City far behind. Now the Wicked Witch of the West had only one eye, but that eye was as powerful as a telescope and could see everywhere. So as she sat at a window of her yellow castle, she looked round and saw the travellers a long way off. She was so angry to see them that she blew on a silver whistle and summoned a great pack of wolves.
"There are strangers in my land. They are not even fit to be my slaves. So I order you to tear them into little pieces."
The wolves dashed away at full speed. It was lucky that the Tin Man was wide awake and heard them coming. He seized his sharp axe and chopped off the head of the leading wolf as it leapt towards him. Then he swung his axe again and again until 40 wolves all lay dead in a heap before him. The next morning, Dorothy shivered with fright when she saw the great pile of shaggy wolves, and the Wicked Witch became angrier than ever when she looked out and saw the strangers were still alive. Then she blew on her silver whistle and summoned a great flock of wild crows.
"Fly at once to the strangers, pick out their eyes, and tear them into little pieces!"
she screamed. As soon as the Scarecrow saw the crows flying towards him, he told his friends to lie down. He then stretched out his arms, caught hold of the leading crow, and twisted its neck until it died. He did this to the next crow, and the crow after that, until at last the whole flock of 40 crows lay dead at his feet. When the Wicked Witch saw this, she went into a terrible rage. She called a dozen of her Winky slaves, gave them sharp spears, and told them to destroy the strangers. But the Yellow Winkies were not brave people. When they marched up to the travellers, the lion gave such a great roar that they ran straight back to the castle. The witch was so angry that she stamped her feet, tore her hair, and gnashed her teeth. There was now only one thing she could do. She must use the golden cap to summon the winged monkeys. She put the cap on her head and chanted,
Epi-peppy-cacky, zizzy, zazzy, zeek!
There was a low rumbling sound, a rushing of many wings, a great chattering and laughing. And then, out of the sky, came a crowd of monkeys, each with an immense pair of powerful wings. Their leader, who was much bigger than the rest, said,
This is the third time you have used the golden cap. Whoever owns the cap can summon us 3 times. And give us any order they please. We will always obey. But remember, no one can summon us more than 3 times.
Why should I need you again?
Snarled the witch. You have helped to make the Winkies my slaves and driven the great Oz out of my land. My third and last order is that you should destroy the strangers in my land, all except the lion. I want you to bring him to me so that I can harness him like a horse and make him work for me. Your command shall be obeyed, said the leader. And then the winged monkeys flew to Dorothy and her friends. Some seized the Tin Man and dropped him from a great height onto some sharp rocks. Here he lay, so battered and dented that he couldn't move. Others caught the Scarecrow and pulled out all his straw. Then they made his clothes into a small bundle and threw it into the topmost branches of a tall tree. The remaining monkeys wound so many pieces of stout rope around the lion that it was soon impossible for him to struggle. They lifted him up and flew away with him to the castle, where he was placed in a small yard surrounded by a high iron fence. But they did no harm to Dorothy. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her, grinning terribly. But when he saw the mark of the good witch's kiss on her forehead, he stopped short.
We dare not harm this little girl, nor the dog she carries in her arms,
he said. So very gently, he picked up Dorothy and Toto and carried them to the castle. The wicked witch was both surprised and worried when she saw the mark on Dorothy's forehead, and she trembled with fear when she looked down at Dorothy's feet and saw the silver shoes. It was only when she looked into Dorothy's eyes that she felt safe again.
The child obviously doesn't know what wonderful power the shoes give her, she thought. I can still make her my slave.
And with a happy cackle, she led Dorothy to the kitchen and ordered her to clean the pots and pans. In the days that followed, Dorothy had to work very hard. She lived in fear of being beaten, but in fact, the witch did not dare strike her because of the mark on her forehead. Apart from Toto, Dorothy's only friend was the lion. Each night she crept down to the yard where he was imprisoned and lay down beside him. She put her head on his soft, shaggy mane, and together they tried to plan their escape. Now the wicked witch longed to have Dorothy's silver shoes and all the power that went with them. So one day she played a nasty trick on her. She put an iron bar in the middle of the kitchen floor and then made it invisible. When Dorothy next walked across the room, she didn't realize it was there and fell right over it. In her fall, one of the silver shoes came off, and with a cry of triumph, the wicked witch snatched it up.
Give me back my shoe,
Dorothy yelled.
Certainly not,
laughed the witch.
I shall keep it, and someday I shall get the other one from you too.
This made Dorothy so angry that she picked up her bucket of water and threw it over the witch. The wicked woman gave a loud screech of fear, and then, as Dorothy looked at her in wonder, she began to shrink and fall away.
See what you've done,
she screamed.
Didn't you know that water would be the end of me? In a minute, I shall be all melted away. Look out! Here I With these words, the witch fell down in a brown, shapeless mass and began to spread over the floor. Seeing that she really had melted away, Dorothy snatched up the silver shoe and ran to tell the lion. The lion was overjoyed to hear Dorothy's news. So too were the Winkies. When Dorothy told them they were no longer slaves, they happily agreed to help her find the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. A group of them travelled all that day and part of the next, until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Man lay, all battered and bent. They lifted him gently onto a stretcher and carried him back to the castle. Here the tinsmiths hammered and twisted, soldered and polished, until the Tin Man was his old self again. He had a few patches, it's true, but he also had a new golden handle for his axe. He was so pleased that he wept tears of joy, which Dorothy had to wipe away before they rusted his joints. The next day, Dorothy and her friends led a search party for the Scarecrow. At last, they spotted his clothes at the top of a tall tree, which was impossible to climb. So the Tin Man chopped it down, and Dorothy took the clothes from the branches. She carried them back to the castle, stuffed them with nice clean straw. And there was the Scarecrow as good as ever, thanking them over and over again for saving him. The friends spent several happy days at the castle, but Dorothy could not forget her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry and her home in Kansas. So one day she said, "We must go back to Oz and remind him of his promise to help us if we destroyed the Wicked Witch." Her friends all agreed. The next day they would say goodbye to the Winkies and then set out again for the Emerald City. The Winkies didn't want to say goodbye to Dorothy and her friends. Indeed, they'd grown so fond of the Tin Man that they begged him to stay and rule over the land of the West. When they realized that he was determined to go back to the Emerald City, they gave him a silver oil can and presented Dorothy with a golden cap. "You destroyed the Wicked Witch and set us free," said one of the Winkies. "So we think you should have her most valued possession, this golden cap. It has a charm written inside. Perhaps it will help you next time you're in trouble." Dorothy put the cap on her head. Then she thanked the Winkies for their present and set out with her friends across the fields. There was no road to the Emerald City, but they knew that they must walk eastwards towards the rising sun. At first, they were sure they were going the right way. But by midday, the sun was directly over their heads, and they didn't know which way was east and which was west. "Oh, what shall we do?" said Dorothy. "We're completely lost."
Why don't you try the charm in the golden cap?"
said the Scarecrow. Dorothy looked inside the cap and read the directions. Then she put it back on her head, stood on her left foot, and chanted, "Eppy peppy, khaki zizzy zuzzy zeek." In an instant, there was a great chattering and flapping of wings, and the band of winged monkeys flew up to them. The travellers were rather frightened, until the king bowed low before Dorothy and said,
You now own the golden cap,
So we must obey you 3 times. Tell me, what is your first command?"
"To be taken to the Emerald City," said Dorothy, "for we've lost our way."
"We will carry you,"
said the king. And no sooner had he spoken than 2 of the monkeys caught Dorothy in their arms and flew away with her. Other monkeys lifted up her friends. They flew very fast, and it wasn't long before the travellers were standing at the gate of the Emerald City. The guardian of the gate fitted them with green spectacles, and then led them to the palace. The soldier with green whiskers was still on guard.
What? Are ye back again?
He asked in surprise.
I thought you had gone to visit the Wicked Witch of the West.
"We did visit her,"
said the lion.
"and Dorothy destroyed her."
Good gracious!
said the soldier, and hurried off to tell the great Oz. Dorothy and her friends were sure that the wizard would send for them at once, but he did not. Instead, he gave orders for them to be shown to comfortable rooms. They had no word from Oz the next day, nor the next. At last they grew so tired of waiting that the Scarecrow sent him a message. If he didn't see them straight away, they would summon the winged monkeys. This frightened the wizard, and he immediately invited them to the throne room. Slowly, they opened the door and anxiously looked round for a giant head, a ball of fire, or some hideous beast. But all they saw was an empty throne. They drew close to each other, for the stillness of the room seemed more dreadful than any of the forms they had seen Oz take. Presently, they heard a voice coming from the dome in the ceiling.
I am Oz, the great and terrible. Why do you seek me?
"Where are you?" asked Dorothy.
I am everywhere, but to the eyes of common mortals, I am invisible. I will now sit on my throne so that you can talk with me.
Indeed, the voice seemed just then to come straight from the throne itself. "We have come to claim our promise, Great Oz," said Dorothy. "You promised to help us if we destroyed the Wicked Witch, and we have destroyed her. I melted her with a bucket of water."
Dear me, said the voice. How sudden! Well, come back tomorrow, for I must have time to think it over.
You have had plenty of time already,
said the Tin Man, angrily rushing towards the throne. The lion gave such a dreadful roar that Toto jumped away in alarm and knocked over the screen that stood in the corner. They all looked in amazement at the little old man who now stood before them.
I am Oz, the Great Wizard, he said. At least I'm supposed to be, but really I'm just a common man.
You are more than that,
said the Scarecrow.
You are a humbug. Oh, exactly so, said the little man.
But I don't understand, said Dorothy. How did you manage to appear to me as a giant head?
Oh, that was one of my tricks,
said Oz, and he led them into a small room. In the corner lay a giant paper head.
I hung this from the ceiling by a wire. Then I stood behind the screen and pulled a thread to make the eyes and mouth move.
What about the voice? Dorothy inquired.
Oh, I am a ventriloquist, and I can throw the sound of my voice wherever I wish. It was easy to deceive all of you.
The little man then told the travellers his story. He was born in Omaha, near Kansas. As a young man, he'd been a balloonist as well as a ventriloquist. One day, his balloon carried him high above the clouds and far away to the strange country of Oz. When the people saw him coming down from the sky, they thought he was a great wizard and promised to do anything he asked. So he ordered them to build a palace and a city.
As the country was so green, I decided to call it the Emerald City, he said. And to make the name fit better, I put green spectacles on all the people so that everything they saw was green.
Isn't everything here green? Asked Dorothy.
Oh, no. But the people have been wearing the green spectacles for so many years that they believe it is. They also believe that I am more powerful than all the witches. But, in fact, I've always feared the magic powers of the wicked witches. That's why I promised to help you if you would do away with the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm not sure that I can keep my promise, but I will try. All I ask is that you don't tell anyone that I'm a humbug."
A great and mighty humbug, thought Dorothy. But she and her friends agreed to say nothing, and the next day the Scarecrow hurried off to see Oz again. The little man asked for permission to unfasten and empty the Scarecrow's head. This done, he poured a mixture of bran, pins and needles into the top and stuffed the rest of the space with straw. The Scarecrow returned to his friends feeling very wise. The Tin Man was the next to visit the throne room. Oz cut a hole in his chest and pushed a heart of silk stuffed with sawdust into his body. The Tin Man was delighted. Next, it was the turn of the Lion. Oz poured the contents of a green bottle into a dish and told the Lion it was courage. So the Lion drank and joyfully announced that he now felt full of courage.
How easy it is to help others when they think I can do anything,
thought Oz. It was going to be more difficult to help Dorothy, but he would try. When it was her turn to see him, he said,
"We'll make a hot air balloon to carry us back to Kansas."
"Us?" exclaimed Dorothy. "Are you going with me?"
"Oh, yes, of course. I am tired of being such a humbug. Let's get to work right away. We'll make the balloon from strips of silk and fasten a big clothes basket to the bottom for us to ride in."
3 days later, the balloon was finished, and Oz ordered it to be carried outside. The news spread that he was going to visit a great wizard who lived in the sky, and everyone came to see the wonderful sight. The Tin Man had chopped a big pile of wood and made a fire. Oz held the bottom of the balloon over the fire until the silken bag filled with hot air. Then he got into the basket and said in a loud voice,
"While I am away, the Scarecrow will rule over you. I command you to obey him."
The balloon was now tugging at the ropes that held it to the ground.
"Hurry, Dorothy!"
cried Oz.
"Or the balloon will fly away!"
But Dorothy couldn't find Toto. As she searched for him in the crowd, the ropes went crack, and the balloon rose into the air.
Come back!
She screamed.
"I can't come back, my dear,"
called Oz from the air.
"Goodbye!"
And away he floated, never to be seen again in the land of Oz. The people of the Emerald City were very sad to lose the wonderful wizard, but they were also proud that the Scarecrow was now their ruler. "What other city," they said, "is ruled by a stuffed man?" The morning after Oz had gone up in the balloon, the 4 travellers met in the throne room. The Scarecrow sat on the big throne, and the others stood respectfully before him.
"When I remember that just a short time ago I was up a pole in a farmer's cornfield,"
said the new ruler,
"I am quite satisfied with my lot."
"I wish I were," said Dorothy. "But all I want is to live in Kansas with Aunt Em and Uncle Henry. I don't know how I shall get back now that Oz has disappeared."
"I've been thinking," said the Scarecrow. "Why don't you call the winged monkeys and ask them to carry you over the desert to Kansas?"
"What a good idea," said Dorothy joyfully. She put the golden cap on her head and spoke the magic words.
Eppy, peppy, khaki, zizzy, zuzzy, zeek.
Soon the band of winged monkeys was standing beside her. "Please take me to Kansas, she said. The Monkey King shook his head gravely.
That cannot be done. We belong to this country alone and cannot leave it. We shall be glad to help you in any way in our power. But we cannot cross the desert.
With a bow, the Monkey King spread his wings and flew away through the window, followed by his band. Dorothy could have cried. She was so disappointed. But the Scarecrow had been thinking again, and he now suggested that they call in the soldier with green whiskers and ask for his advice.
There is only one person who might be able to help Dorothy,
said the soldier.
and that is Glinda, the Witch of the South. She rules over the Quadlings and is the most powerful of all the witches. She's also a good witch. What is more, her castle stands on the edge of the desert, so she may know a way to cross it.
How can I get to her castle? Asked Dorothy.
The road is straight to the south, but it's full of dangers to travellers. It seems,
said the Scarecrow,
that despite the dangers, Dorothy must travel to the land of the south. I will go with her,
said the Lion.
for she will need someone to protect her. Then I will go too,
said the Tin Man.
and I,
Said the Scarecrow.
I'll never leave Dorothy until she starts back to Kansas for good and all.
So, early next morning, the travellers set out across the green fields that surrounded the Emerald City. They walked until they entered a great forest, where the trees were bigger than any they had ever seen,
What a delightful place!
declared the Lion.
I should like to live here all my life.
At that moment, they heard a low rumble, like the growling of many wild animals. And there, in a clearing, were hundreds of beasts. There were tigers and elephants and bears and wolves and foxes. And for a moment, Dorothy was afraid. But the Lion explained that the animals were holding a meeting, and he judged by their snarling and growling that they were in great trouble. As he spoke, the animals fell silent, and the biggest of all the tigers came up to him.
Welcome, O King of Beasts. You have come in good time to fight our enemy. It is a most tremendous monster. It is like a great spider, with a body as big as an elephant and 8 legs as long as tree trunks. Not one of us is safe while it's alive. Are there any other lions in this forest?
Asked the Lion.
No, there were some, but the monster has eaten them all. And besides, none of them were as large and brave as you. If I destroy your enemy, will you bow down to me and obey me as king of the forest?
Asked the Lion.
We will do that gladly,
Replied the tiger.
We will!
Roared the other beasts. The Lion said goodbye to his friends and boldly marched away. He found his enemy lying asleep among the trees. With a great leap, he landed on the monster's back, and with a blow of his paw, he knocked the spider's head from its body. Then he jumped down and walked back to the clearing.
You need fear your enemy no longer,
The Lion proudly told the beasts. Then they bowed down to him as their king, and he promised to come back and rule over them as soon as Dorothy was safely on her way to Kansas. The 4 travellers walked on through the forest. When they finally came out of its gloom, they saw a steep hill covered from top to bottom with great rocks.
This'll be a hard climb,
said the Scarecrow.
but we must get over the hill.
So he led the way, and the others followed. They'd nearly reached the first rock when they heard a rough voice cry out,
Keep back! This hill belongs to us, and we won't allow anyone to cross it.
The strangest man the travellers had ever seen then stepped out from behind the rock. He was quite short and stout, and had a big head, which was flat at the top and supported by a thick neck full of wrinkles. But he had no arms at all. So the Scarecrow walked forward and said,
We must pass over your hill, whether you like it or not.
As quick as lightning, the man's head shot forward, and his neck stretched out until the top of his head struck the Scarecrow and sent him tumbling down the hill. Almost as quickly as it came, the head went back into his body.
It isn't as easy as you think,
said the man with a harsh laugh. And then the travellers heard a chorus of boisterous laughter as hundreds of armless hammerheads stepped out from behind the rocks. With a loud roar that echoed like thunder, the lion dashed up the hill. Again, a head shot out, and the great lion went rolling down the hill as if he'd been struck by a cannonball. "What shall we do?" asked Dorothy, as she helped her friends to their feet.
Call the winged monkeys,
said the Tin Man.
You have the right to command them one more time.
Very well, she answered, and putting on the golden cap, she chanted the magic words. Eppy, peppy, khaki, zizzy, zuzzy, zeek. The monkeys were as prompt as ever, and in a few moments they stood before her. Carry us over the hill to the country of the Quadlings, commanded Dorothy.
It shall be done,
said the king. And at once the winged monkeys caught the travellers in their arms and flew away with them. As they passed over the hill, the hammerheads yelled angrily and shot their heads high in the air. But they couldn't reach the winged monkeys. And soon Dorothy and her friends were standing in the beautiful country of the Quadlings. Pretty rippling brooks burbled among fields of ripening corn. The fences, houses, and bridges were all painted red, and the short, fat Quadlings were dressed in red clothes. They gladly showed Dorothy the way to Glinda's castle. The gates of Glinda's castle were guarded by 3 young girls dressed in handsome red uniforms. They led the travellers to a big room where the young and beautiful Glinda sat upon a throne of rubies. "What can I do for you, my child?" she said, smiling kindly. Dorothy told the story of her adventures in the land of Oz. Then she said, "My greatest wish is to get back to Kansas, for Aunt Em will surely think something dreadful has happened to me. I am sure I can help you, but in return, you must give me the golden cap." "Willingly," exclaimed Dorothy. "It means you can command the winged monkeys just 3 times, and I shall need their services those 3 times, to carry the Scarecrow to the Emerald City, the Lion to the forest, and the Tin Man to the Winkies. The silver shoes will carry you over the desert, Dorothy. If you had known their power, you could have gone back to your Aunt Em the day you came to this country."
But then I should not have had my wonderful brains,
said the Scarecrow.
and I should not have had my lovely heart,
said the Tin Man.
and I should have lived like a coward forever,
declared the Lion. "This is true," said Dorothy, "and I'm glad I've helped all my friends. But now I should like to go back to Kansas." "All you have to do," said Glinda, is knock the heels of the shoes together 3 times and command them to carry you wherever you wish. You will get there in the twinkling of an eye.
Then it's time for me to say goodbye, said Dorothy.
She threw her arms around the lion's neck and kissed him, patting his big head tenderly. Then she kissed the Tin Man, who was weeping in a way most dangerous to his joints. Finally, she hugged the soft, stuffed body of the Scarecrow and found that she was crying herself. Glinda stepped down from her throne and gave the little girl a goodbye kiss. Then Dorothy picked up Toto, clapped the heels of her shoes together 3 times and said, "Take me home to Aunt Em." Instantly she was whirling through the air, so swiftly that all she could see or feel was the wind whistling past her ears. Then the silver shoes took 3 steps, and she found herself sitting on the broad Kansas prairie, right in front of the house Uncle Henry had built after the cyclone had carried the old one away. Dorothy leapt to her feet. She didn't notice that the silver shoes had fallen off in her flight across the desert. Instead, she ran as fast as she could into the arms of Aunt Em, who was just coming outside.
"Darling child,"
Aunt Em cried.
"Where in the world have you come from?"
From the land